What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Austin, and welcome to the One Last Hit podcast. And we have a very special one today. So I'm joined by Miss Dawn Mannion. Did I say your last name right? Is it Mannion?
Yeah, you actually did.
Cool. And she wrote a book called Love is Greater Than Addiction, which I was just telling her I've gotten through the first few chapters. I had a vacation come up, so I forgot the book at home accidentally. But she has a really, really cool story that I'm excited to dive into with you today, Dawn. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go early. Where does it all begin? What are your earliest memories? How did this all start?
I mean, like a lot of people ask me, like, how did it all begin? And it's really difficult. It's not like there was one dramatic moment where I became homeless and I was shooting up, and you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy how gradual it was and how easily everything became normal one step at a time, like I was drinking with my parents when I was young, and my parents, they were fighting their own addictions, and nothing was like not normal to me, because that's the environment I was raised in. So like I started drinking a lot. I was probably a full-blown alcoholic by the time I was 19, and I mean, most people think that's young, but it took me so long to get there. I started when I was like 11 or 12, and then alcohol, like most addictions, it became not enough. I discovered cocaine. Cocaine was the answer to all my problems. I loved cocaine, and I don't mean to glorify it and by any means, but it brought me to further into my addiction. I didn't even know I was an addict. I mean, like, I didn't even admit that I was an addict to myself until I got sober. And then
I'm curious of something. Apologies for cutting you off, but before we go too far down the timeline, so young Dawn, right? You picked up a drink at 11.
Yeah.
What was going on prior to that? Like, if you could name, all right, if I could get you, kind of into your heart here, what did it feel like to be a kid with, you said you had two parents that were fighting their own addictions? Like, what did childhood feel like in retrospect?
I mean, weirdly enough, like my childhood seemed pretty normal. And I think that anybody who's gone through a childhood like mine would say the same thing, because when you're young, you don't really realize how unnormal those things are, because when you are growing and raised in that, so when I started drinking, I thought I was cool. I thought I was like the adults in my family. I thought I was, fitting in with my family better than I probably ever did before. It's all about like acceptance, really. I don't know why I've always battled that acceptance thing, but yeah. So does that answer?
Tell me more. Yeah, no, it totally does. There we go. Tell me more about the acceptance thing. Like, what was it? Were you not accepted as a child? Do you have memories of that being the case?
I don't really understand it a lot myself. It's not that I wasn't accepted, because I guess I was, but I was always just the eager to please kid. I was the kind of kid that, if you told me I was doing something wrong, I would never do it again, because I just wanted everybody around me to be happy with who I was. I wanted to make people proud. I wanted to be loved more than everybody else, and like I got straight A's until like the 6th grade for that reason. Like I just really always wanted people to love me and like me and stuff, and I don't really know where that like stemmed from, but it was just always, I had to be the best, and
I got you.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how like you can go from wanting to be the best and looking forward to like college and stuff like that, to becoming like the best at shooting up, and like it's just so crazy.
Yeah. No, I got you. And it sounds like, all right, so you get straight A's until 6th grade, which is coincidentally the same grade when you start drinking. And what was your first drink? Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
What was your first drink like?
I don't even really remember. I don't think I liked it very much. I do remember the first time I got like hammered drunk. My mom had this great idea that if she got me so drunk that I would be so hungover that I would never want to drink again. And it's actually a funny story that my mom still tells to this day about how the next day I woke up in my own puke. I was only like 13 or something when that happened. And she asked me, "Hey Dawn, do you want to drink with me tonight?" And I said to her, "And maybe not tonight, Mom, but ask me tomorrow." Like, it's crazy. So her
Wow.
theory was great.
So 13 years old and having 5 kids myself, right? I've got a 15-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. And I think about me taking my first drink at 13, right? I was a baby. And
Right.
so 13 years old, your mom gets you so drunk that she's hoping the experience will deter you from ever wanting to drink again. And it sounds like what it actually did was spur on your drinking. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Once it became okay with my parents, it became
Mhm.
an okay thing to me. I was like, well, my parents let me do it,
Yeah.
and so that's where I think really began branching out from my parents' house. I didn't drink at home anymore. I started drinking at parties and, things like that. Me and my friends, we were going to, houses of much older kids who were actually allowed to drink and old enough to, and we were regulars at parties like that.
Yeah.
So it
So
just
so
kept
how do
going.
sorry, we have a small lag and I'll edit
Oh,
this
I'm
part,
sorry.
but we have a small lag. That's why I keep over talking to you and I apologize for that.
Okay.
I'll fix it in post. But so how do we get from the girl who, is taking, maybe have a few drinks, you get tanked up at 13. How do we get to full-blown alcoholic at 19?
Well, I mean, I was going through a lot with the whole move to Florida. Um, I didn't fit in with the kids
Mm-hmm.
in Florida. They were way more advanced than me in everything, like in academics, which is where I started to lack there because I tried my best and I still wasn't quite living up to the standard that I had held for myself, being a straight A student, and they were already doing drugs, they were already, partying, and I didn't really know what to do to fit in, and so once school was no longer looking like a prospect of keeping me, in the standard I wanted to be, I started making friends. And that was how making friends became. It was like, well, I better do what they do. That way there, because I
Mm.
mean, it started off where we didn't do the same thing. So they would pass around the joint and I'd be like, oh no, thank you. But that always made me kind of like stuck up, and so, and I'm also Irish. So I don't really get the whole, I get the spins and I throw up and my body tells me to stop. I don't really get that. So it was like almost a party trick that somebody my size could outdrink the biggest men there, and stuff like that. And so it just became so regular in my life that I didn't even really even acknowledge the addiction part. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that people who told me to stop, they were people who didn't care about me, or if it was a problem for them, then it was their problem, not mine, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So when you say you were full-blown alcoholic at 19, is this daily drinking every day?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I drank. It got to a point where by the time I was like in my early 20s, I was drinking like 2 cases of beer every night to myself.
Ooh, no
Yeah,
kidding.
and I'm talking like a whopping 89 pounds I weighed at the time,
Mm-hmm.
so it's insane to think that I was able to drink through that much alcohol. But I mean,
Yeah.
my parents, like, I don't mean to say anything mean about my parents because I don't think they realized what they were doing at the time, but they were enablers. I would go over to their house. We would have my birthday parties at their house and they'd be full blown big ass events. Excuse my language. Big events where we
Oh
could,
no,
I
you
could,
can say anything you want to say. You're good
okay.
though.
But I would with all my friends, and then when my parents would provide bottles and bottles of liquor, and we would just get super drunk, and it was cool because they were allowed to come to my house and stay there and do that, and
Hmm.
I I loved it too, I mean, my mom was like the cool mom, and it was great. They brought me closer to my parents, if anything, really, at the time.
Hmm.
So, and it's
Interesting.
crazy because when I quit drinking, we actually had a falling out. And I wonder sometimes still to this day, I wonder if that was partially because I was no longer helping them enable me or enabling them.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry to hear that.
eh,
So,
we're okay
so
now.
cocaine, you mentioned that cocaine comes into the mix. When does that show up?
Cocaine is crazy because I mean, like I say, I don't like posting blame to my parents because everything that I did was on my own free will. It was never forced upon me. I caught my mom doing cocaine when I was like 13 or 14 years old. I caught my mom doing cocaine. Um, and a friend of mine, she had brought it to a party once and she was like, "Hey, I've got this." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then I was like, "But my mom does it, so it can't be that bad, right?" And so I did a line and immediately fell in love with cocaine. Like I hate to admit it now, but it's the truth. Like that first line, it made me confident. It made me not care whether people were thinking about me. It made me happy. It was. I used to joke that cocaine's a dreamer drug, and it really is. It makes you think about all these great, amazing things that you're going to do with your life. Unfortunately, you just can't. Not when you're, always messed up. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. So how does that affect your life from that point forward? I mean, where does it start going?
Well, cocaine, I actually started to realize was a problem. And then I got pregnant. And so it was a good excuse for me to quit doing everything. And I always felt like being a good mom was the kind of mom who didn't, do drugs. And so it was about 7 years where I quit like doing drugs completely, um, just to be a mom. And with my third child, my daughter, I started doing cocaine again, but like on the weekends when I had a babysitter, stuff like that. And um, by then I was drinking again too, and then I don't even know what happened really in between there and meth. But once I discovered meth, I was like, oh, this is way better than cocaine. I was like, it's cheaper, it lasts longer, and I'm more effective on it. I don't have to sleep, like,
Hmm.
so I mean, that's kind of how that went, I guess.
Yeah. Do you remember? I mean, I assume you do. The first time that you got high on meth, like what was that like? What brought that about?
It's crazy because my drug of choice at the time was cocaine. This is after I'd left my daughter's father, so I was only seeing her occasionally, and so I had all the free time in the world to do cocaine. So I was doing cocaine, and I was living in a trailer with my boyfriend at the time and his best friend. Well, his best friend did meth, and I couldn't get any cocaine that night. So he was like, "Well, I've got meth." And I was like, okay. I mean, I was like, I trusted him at the time. I've seen him and how he acts on meth, and I never seen anything wrong with it. So I was like, okay. So honestly, if meth had not been available that day, I probably would have just stayed on cocaine. But it was because cocaine was not available and meth was that I was like, okay, I'll give it a try.
And what can you describe it like for anyone that's never done that drug? Like what was the difference between that and blow?
I wish I could say that I hated it right away. I wish I could. But I took one hit. I was smoking it at the time. I took one hit and it was like wow to me. I It was like all the things that cocaine gave me, but no crash. I had no crash. I wasn't fiending for more 10 minutes later, it lasted for hours. And I felt like I was a lot more capable of doing things at the time. And so, like, I had all this extra energy and all this extra time because I wasn't sleeping. And I really, truly believed that I was like succeeding in things. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and I was like, wow, this is the best drug ever. It makes me more social. I'm less awkward. I'm getting everything I need done. I'm working my 2 jobs, and now I'm not tired after 2 days, 2 jobs in one day. It was so great in the beginning. Like I really thought it was the answer to every problem that I had not even thought I had,
Yeah. Yeah. The great lie, man. That bag will cost you $50 and the next 20 years of your life or whatever,
Right. That was another thing. Cocaine was more expensive at the time. And so I was spending half the money. It was lasting twice as long, and it was like, wow, why wasn't I doing this before? Like that's when, and then I still did cocaine after that. It's so funny how addiction lets you believe you're in control. And so I thought in order to not spend too much money on one or the other, I would do cocaine for 2 weeks out of every month. And then the last 2 weeks of the month, I would do meth, and it kept my tolerance down. And yeah, like I was like, I have control over this because I have a system that makes it work to not spend all my money on it. Because 2 weeks, I found out 2 weeks off of cocaine lowered my tolerance pretty well. And so then I'd do 2 weeks of meth, and then 2 weeks off of meth lowered my tolerance pretty well. So I was keeping it relatively inexpensive, but still doing what I wanted to all the time.
And so how do you get from you're living with your boyfriend and his roommate, right? Taking your first hit of meth to being homeless for a long, long time?
It's crazy because I bounced from that time. When I first started meth, I bounced around from friends' houses and, pretty much couch surfing. I was paying rent at these places, but I might as well have been couch surfing, And I got a new boyfriend, and I moved in with him, and he did heroin, but he also did meth, and he sold meth. And so I used to get very upset with him because we would run out of meth. And by then I was on meth constantly. I couldn't get cocaine anymore. I didn't even want to anymore. And I used to get angry with him. Oh, well, how do we run out when you sell it? And so I got, I don't know, snooty about it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start selling meth, and we'll never run out. And for the next year and a half, I sold meth and never ran out, not once. Even made it through Corona and everything. I never ran out. By then I had high connections and everything. And that boyfriend, he didn't like me anymore, and he kicked me out because I showed him up basically, and I wasn't getting him free stuff. I was yelling at him for doing it. And so that ended, and I ended up back at my mom's, which I already knew living with my parents how that ends. I'd never been able to live with them long as an adult and them not kick me out for one reason or another. So I was there a short time. During that time, I started dating a guy named Caleb, and he was homeless. And so when I got kicked out of my parents, I was like, well, Caleb's homeless. He'll take care of me. I got out on the street. And almost as soon as I joined him on the street, he got arrested for domestic abuse because he was dragging me behind a gas station in the middle of the night. Somebody had called. I was fearing for my life and everything. It was crazy. A customer had called the cops because they saw him drag me around inside the building. The police ran up on him before he got me behind the building, luckily. And they arrested him for domestic abuse. And actually at the time my mind was so messed up. I was afraid of being homeless. I was a drug addict. So I actually got very mad that somebody got into my business and called the police.
Mm.
I tried everything to get those police to not take him to jail because I was afraid of surviving on the street alone, and I was like, you're taking my only resource here, and like, I even went to a domestic violence class at Quigley House, not because I decided to leave him or anything, but because I thought it would improve his chances of the state not picking up the charges.
Mm. Did it?
Yeah. No, he had
No.
priors. So
Oh,
the state picked up the charges. They gave him 60 days. And I spent the next 60 days learning how to be homeless on my own. And
mm.
and I learned during that time that I actually was better at it than I was depending on him. So by the time he got out of jail, I expected, to be able to show him my new independence and everything. I expected that to work out. I don't know. It didn't. It didn't work out. I ended up breaking up with him, and because I was like, man, why am I dealing with this violence and all this? I can live by myself. I know this now. So I broke up with him. He disappeared, and I still have no idea to this day whatever happened to him. He just fell off the face of the earth. So I don't know if he overdosed on drugs or what, because he was doing fentanyl or what. I don't know.
Wow.
But I slowly became better and better at becoming homeless, Like I got better. Like when I broke up with the boyfriend who used to shoot me up, I got better at shooting myself up, and it's crazy how addiction it changes where you draw the line at what should be success. Instead of being proud of me getting a job or still trying to get out of that situation, I became proud of being better at it, and like, and that just seemed okay to me. I was like, wow, look how good I am at this.
Could you describe to me and anyone listening what a normal day looked like being homeless?
I tell people all the time, I created an acronym for it, actually. It's called the HMBDGH repeat symbol. And that means hustle, money, buy dope, get high, repeat. That's what it stands for. And every morning you wake up, you take inventory. You see how much dope you have, and that is true for a lot of homeless people. And it's not because we all got there because of dope, but we definitely were all on dope by the time we got there,
Mm-hmm.
And that's once you did inventory. If you had no dope, then it was time to hustle money. You had to figure out how to get out there and make $1 because you only had a few hours before you needed the dope,
Yeah.
And so once you hustle money, you get high. As soon as you're done getting high, I mean, there's not enough hours in the day to hustle money, buy dope, get high. There's not. So by the time you're to the point of getting high, it's a recycle. You're right back to the beginning of the next day. Hustle money, and I mean, unfortunately, hustling money there's only a few ways you can do that when you're homeless. If you have a daily habit, you can't just go get a job. People don't understand that. You have a daily habit. You have a habit that's demanding things from you now, not a week from now when you get your first paycheck, and that's totally, that's if you could even get a job. Because when you have nowhere to shower, nowhere to live, no way to drive there, it becomes exceedingly more difficult to get a job. I had a job when I first got on the street. I was working at AutoZone in the warehouse, and I quit that job thinking, oh, I'll just get another job because I've never had trouble getting another job until I was homeless. When you have no phone for them to reach you on, when you have you have no resources to keep that job, it becomes extremely difficult. That's when I started flying a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a common way of doing it. And so you were living now, were you in Jacksonville? What part of Florida were you in?
I'm in Orange Park and Jacksonville. I'm like literally on the Duval Clay County line. So Duval being Jacksonville, Clay County being Orange Park. I've been both jails, arrested in both. I've been homeless all around both Orange Park and Jacksonville.
What was your living situation like? Because I know you kind of described that a little bit in your book.
Well, in the beginning, I was afraid to live in the woods. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of the people. I was afraid of being invisible. So in the beginning, first couple of years I was homeless, I lived on sidewalks. I rode a bicycle, which carried all my belongings, and I slept anywhere I could find a corner where I might not be noticed right away with a camera above me. Because I was convinced that if there was a camera above me, if anybody tried anything, I could just point at the camera and hopefully they'd be like, oh, better not, or whatever.
Right.
I just thought living under a camera would be easiest. Eventually you get chased off of enough sidewalks, you get arrested enough times, and you just have nowhere else to go but the woods. I had friends who lived in camps. And so I gradually began staying with friends in their camps. I never really built my own until I met my boyfriend, Tony, still to this day, my boyfriend. He was the first one that really showed me how you can make a home in the woods. He built me a surprise camp off of 295. It was like literally right off the on-ramp of the freeway. It was crazy. Most people drove by it though, never knowing it was there because you went through a little hole in the fence. But we started building that camp. He surprised me with what he built, and then we started building from there. We survived our first hurricane in that camp, and it became something that was not just walking through a hole in the fence into a discarded patch of woods. It became home. It was somewhere we both showed up at night to expect the other one there. It's where we slept. It's where we learned to love each other, really. And I think if we never had those moments in that camp in the beginning, we probably wouldn't still be together sober today.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever did the cops ever come in and bust up your camp, or did you ever get robbed or anything like that?
Always. It's when you live in the public, your life is public. Everything you do, everything you have is public. It doesn't matter, and the police, some of them, and I'm not going to speak for all the police because there are good cops out there who have good morals, but some of them target the homeless because it's an easy arrest. When you carry everything you own on you and you're a drug addict, chances are you're going to be carrying drugs. When you're living on somebody else's property, even though that person lives in say California and they just own a slice of land here that's going to shit, it still belongs to somebody. You know what I'm saying? And so they use that as an excuse to almost hunt you down, and it's constant. Every single camp you own, you don't have long, because I don't think I've ever lived in a camp for more than a couple months before the police came and disbanded it. And then not only do they disband it, but they trespass you from that property. So you have whatever allotted amount of time they give you to get off the property. You have that much time to get everything you've owned in that couple months and get it out. And then once you get it out and run out of time, if you go back to get anything, you risk getting arrested because you've been trespassed. So I'm actually currently I'm trespassed at over 40 stores along Blanding Boulevard locally, where I'm technically not even allowed on the property, or I can go to jail. And I can't even tell you what those places are because there's so many.
Just listening to the progression from the little girl getting drunk with mom, right? Yeah. Continuing to drink cocaine, meth, now homeless. And then you had mentioned earlier injecting crystal meth. How did that come about?
Well, I was kind of naive when it came to injecting drugs. I just knew I never wanted to do it. I would not do it. I thought that injecting drugs only happened with heroin users. I didn't realize that you could actually inject meth. That boyfriend that I told you about that I used to sell drugs for, he did heroin and he also did meth. And that's when he told me, because I started not really feeling the effects as much from smoking it, and I would complain about it. And he was like, well, I got a solution for that.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you shoot it up, you will never not feel it again. And I was like, oh, wait. I was like, you can do that? And I was drunk at the time. I was drinking that night. And he was like, absolutely. And he reassured me it was perfectly safe. He told me it didn't hurt, blah, blah, blah. I will never, ever forget my first time shooting up meth. The instant I started to feel it go up my veins. And like, I thought my arm was on fire, and I looked at him. I was scared. I was like, is it supposed to feel like that? And he reassured me. He was like, yeah, that's fine. It's good. That means it's good meth. And I'm like, okay. And then as soon as I felt it hit probably around my shoulder area, I felt that feeling hit there. It hit me. And it was like, whew. It was such a rush that I coughed. I couldn't even breathe. It was such a rush. And instantaneously, I was like, I love that. I love that. But I was still like conscious about what that meant. And so I wouldn't shoot up all the time. He did it for me. I was too afraid of needles. I know that sounds crazy. I was too afraid of needles to actually do it or look at it to do it. So he did it for me, and he would only do it for me when the smoking wasn't working. And then when we broke up, I thought, okay, that's it. I'm not going to do it anymore, and then that feeling of wanting that feeling again came back. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do this myself. And I missed several times. A lot of people don't know this, but when you miss with meth, you miss a vein, it hurts. It hurts a lot. It also has a high, like when you shoot cocaine, totally numb. It doesn't hurt when you miss. But with meth, it's poison, so
right.
You should expect it hurts a lot. And I had lumps, like 2-inch lumps all over my arms from trying. But that first time that I actually hit the vein myself, I was so proud of myself. And I hate saying that, but I was so excited and so proud. And once I knew what to look for and how to feel for the veins and stuff, it got to the point to where I don't even know why I quit smoking or the little system I had formed. It was just all I wanted to do was shoot up, because it literally was the best way to get what I was looking for at the time.
Wow. And so how long were you homeless for?
8 years, so maybe a little bit longer than 8 years.
Okay. And so towards the end of that 8 years, what does life look like? I mean, 8 years is a long time. You've clearly settled into a routine by that point.
Yeah. As best I could anyway. We had a nice spot, nice little camp. There was like maybe 6 or 8 of us that lived down there. It was far enough from society. We didn't get police to come in very often. And when they did, they came on good terms, because they knew all of us. They didn't just come raiding and throwing us out. They came down to be like, hey, there's a little girl missing. Have you heard anything? And then they leave. So we thought we were, safe. But right before I got sober, I went to jail. I went to jail for possession, which is what I always went to jail for, sorry. I went to jail for possession, and I spent 7 days in jail. Can you stop? I'm sorry, 1 second. Hey,
that's all good.
I'm doing something here. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, what was I talking about now? I don't even know.
Yeah, you're going to jail for possession.
Oh, I went to jail, and it was not my first time in jail. I had been in jail quite a few times before that. When I got out of jail, I went to my camp, and it doesn't matter if you spend one night in jail or 6 months in jail, you never know if your camp is going to be there when you get home. But I went to the camp, and my shelter was still there, but everything had been cleared out. And I didn't know where my boyfriend was. And I went over to my best friend's shelter, Liz, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Cause she was still there. And, she explained to me that 2 days after I went to jail, my boyfriend got locked up and went to jail as well. Once the other homeless people knew that we were both not at our camp, they came and raided it. They robbed everything we owned out of it. Anything that was worth money, anything that was useful, like flashlights or batteries. They even took both our beds. We had a hammock, and then we had like a mattress, and they took both of that like completely. Like it was crazy.
Mm.
And so at that point, I was at a complete loss. I was very desperate, feeling very, very tired of the life. I used to say all the time, I'm getting too old for this. I'm getting too old for this, riding my bike everywhere and stuff. And so feeling totally defeated, I prayed the hardest prayer of my life. I asked God different things. Like before, I used to pray for, just why me? Why can't you make it better for me? Or like, why can't you fix him? And this prayer was a little more deep. It was more like, why can't you fix me? I need your help. I can't do this anymore. And I was bawling my eyes out praying this prayer. It was like middle of the night in front of the at-home store, which is like I don't know, like Pure One type thing. Mm-hmm. But I was sitting out front of their store charging my vapes, bawling my eyes out, praying to God. I was like, please just I need a clear way out of this situation. I need a clear way out of this life. And then I need you to please give me the courage to take it. And then once you give me that, you got to help me become the woman I need to be to bring him with me, because I love him. And as long as he's here, I'll be here, And 3 days after that, the police came and raided our camp and kicked us out. At that time, I didn't think it was the answer to my prayer so much as just more chaos in an already chaotic situation, But I now, in retrospect, look at that moment as when God started working and fixing. I mean, it only took him 3 days until my camp was raided. It was 3 days after that before I moved into his dad's house and waited for him to get out of jail, which is when I got sober. So in a matter of like 6 days, God had completely 180'd what I've been doing, messing up for 8 years. And it was, it's a huge awakening, and it definitely brought me closer to God and made me realize just how real he is.
Yeah. Grace never looks like grace in real time. I got a buddy of mine that says that all the time. It's like, man, isn't that true? It always just looks like my life is ending. And then turns out to be the new beginning. I love that. And so how long do you have sober now? Oh, you're pushing a year, right, Dawn?
Yeah, it'll be a year this month on the 25th.
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. And so how did you get sober? Are you in 12-step recovery? Did you use any sort of sobriety methods or?
I mean, in the beginning, I wasn't even really planning on getting sober. I moved into his dad's house, my boyfriend's dad's house, as a last ditch effort. I had nowhere to go. I had nothing to do. That's where he told me to go. So that's where I went. When I got here, he said I had 3 rules. It was don't bring trash inside, because I was a huge dumpster diver, I had to be home by dark, because once the dark come, he told me the door would be locked. I wouldn't be allowed inside. And I had to stay sober. And so I think sobriety started at first as just fear of losing my place to live while Tony was in jail, and I still actually kind of thought that maybe can you stop? I thought that maybe when he got out of jail, that maybe we would go back to doing what we were doing, what we knew. Because he spent a few more months in jail than I did when I got arrested. So I started living here alone with his dad, which was so awkward because I barely knew the guy. And I started, I got a phone, and I was able to have phone calls from him from jail. And we just started talking about leaving that life behind us. And the longer I went without drugs, the less I really wanted to go back, And then once he got out of jail and he joined me, that's when I definitely was like, I'm done with that. I started before he got out of jail, I cleaned the room. I got rid of all syringes and paraphernalia I could find. I mean, I wanted to make it a temptation-free home where he can come home and be sober with me. And I started going to Celebrate Recovery. at
Mhm.
Elevate Life Church. CR they're nice. They're great. They're good people. It's a faith-based program. I never did do the 12 steps, but that's because my location closest to CR is too far. We ended up stop going, not because I didn't want to go anywhere or didn't want to do the steps. It's just too far. And I made a deal with Tony. I was like, if you go to church with me, then we'll stop going to CR, because he didn't really like it there. I understand why. But so we stopped going to CR and started going to church because it's closer, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't had a struggle with, not a lot. I've had some struggle with staying sober, but not much.
Okay. And so how did the book come about?
Well, it's so crazy
about that process.
I wanted to write a book. I wanted to tell my story. And I told Tony about it. And so he bought me a laptop for Christmas last year to write my book. And the longer I went and the more people I told my story to, the more I realized that I really have something here that can help somebody. And I read this poem in jail. It's called Holes. I don't remember who it's by, but it's about this guy who's stuck in a hole and a voice yells up from above and he says, build a ladder, but the ladder's not high enough. But the guy says, I'll throw down my rope, and he pulls him up, and that guy is Jesus. And then he looks around him and he sees all these other holes. And so the point of that is that it inspired me that sharing my story can help people out of their own holes. And I know that when I was homeless, if somebody had come back, if just one person that I personally knew had come back and told me, hey, you don't have to live like this anymore. It's possible to get out. I might have stopped doing drugs sooner. I might have gotten sober sooner. I might have started trying harder. But I was to the point of so much acceptance of where I had gotten in life that I really truly believed that there was no way out. I believe that loving my kids had to be done at a distance. They would never forgive me. I believed that I could never get a job again. I believed that I was either going to die in a ditch or in prison. That was my belief. But if somebody like me had come back and said, hey, maybe you don't have to die in a ditch, I might have believed them, I mean, every success story I heard on the street was either hearsay or non-existent. It was made up, it was nobody I knew. So that was my goal, was to write the book so that people knew, so they can hear from one of their own that it is possible, that there are success stories, that people can overcome that, and there's still hope for them. And that's why I have the mission to sell 100 books. Once I sell 100 books, I'm going to donate 100 to the jails, and like the jails I was in, Duval County Jail, Clay County Jail, sober living houses, where people are actually going to read the book.
Man, that's awesome. That's beautiful, Dawn. Tell people listening where they can find you, where they can buy your book.
Okay, well, my book is available on Amazon. I've got one here. It looks like that. And it's called Love is Greater Than symbol, Addiction by Dawn Mannion. And you can get a hardcover like this one here, or you can get a paperback. The hardcover is $14.99, I think, or no, $19.99 for the hardcover, and then $14.99 for the paper. There's
awesome.
Also in the back. Hold on, let me see if I can write it real quick. For anybody struggling with addiction, I have included resources in the back. They're both national and local for Jacksonville. Resources for men and women for sober living, and things like that. So recovery.
Absolutely incredible. What a story, man. What a story, Dawn. I'm so glad that you're sober today. I'm so glad that you wrote it down and you were able to find your way out. That's absolutely beautiful. And do me a favor, once we finish here, don't drop off right away. We'll chat afterwards. Okay. And for anyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, do me a favor, leave a review, whatever the hell you do on those platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit that like button. My name's Austin. This is the One Last Hit podcast, and we're going to get the hell out of here. Thanks again, Dawn, and we'll talk soon.